Hello again, everybody. Just making sure my panel members all get up safely to the stage. Thank you for being here after lunch. I'm actually really quite impressed and humbled by how many people we have for this particular panel, so thank you. This is great. We're going to be talking about mobile payments and specifically in context around MPoC. So MPoC being a standard that we have within the Council for mobile payments acceptance. So acceptance of card-based payments on a mobile phone using the NFC on the phone to accept the card, also the PIN potentially on the phone. So what I'd like to do though is introduce or have the panel introduce themselves. So we'll go through, and if you could introduce yourself, your name, and the organization that you're from.
Hello everyone, I'm Irene Ho. I'm in charge of the product and partnerships in Sourcebase, a company based in Malaysia.
I'm Ryan Day. I'm from Block. I lead our product security GRC workstream.
I'm Jochen Pielage. I'm the co-CEO and CTO of Rubean. Who is Rubean? Rubean is a PCI MPoC product and MPoC solution certified soft POS vendor, like most of us here.
Neal Hindocha. I'm Chief Security Officer at MYPINPAD.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So we've had the introductions, and I think it's really interesting when we think about mobile payments in terms of how things have changed. So what I'd like to do is take a little bit of a look backwards, if we may, for a second. So just starting with some of the panel members, and I'll start with you, Irene. What was your first job in the payment industry, and what were things like then compared to now?
Well, my first job is in payment industry is actually my current job.
Wow.
Yeah. So I still remember it's like my first assignment when I joined the company given by my boss was to study the couple of hundreds pages of SPOC requirements. He just tell me to, well, this is the requirements, plan a product, get it certified, and make it work in the market. I would say that my career so far is evolved together with PCI. I can be considered like a child of PCI evolution. The then and now for me would be it's like from SPOC to MPoC.
Right.
Well, I originally worked at a lab that did common criteria and FIPS and things like that, and so I was corollarily exposed to the PCI PTS team, including some in a Viking helmet in the second row, and then eventually moved onto Block to kind of see the other side of the world, then Square. So it was kind of a whole new world and a massive change at that point. I think that's partially because in that lab space, we were kind of looking at some of the traditional type products, and then as I joined Square, it was a whole new world. So it's changed dramatically to see all the different types of perspectives in the ecosystem.
Interesting.
Sure. Yeah, maybe I'm considered the new kid on the payment block. I joined 2.5 years ago, building SaaS platforms for the media and tech industry 20 years before. Why did I join? Because I thought the scaling opportunities, especially in the soft POS market, are gigantic. And then I figured out quickly, wow, this is not just doing technology. There's a SSC, where we're here today. There's a standard that ensures for everybody that this is a secure game. Back to your question, 2.5 years from now, it was already post-corona, but still a lot of things have changed. All new issued cards, at least in our regions, have contactless capabilities. And my kids, they pay with their digital wallet, which is nothing else than a tokenized card. So I think contactless acceptance is everywhere and used more often through technology.
Neal.
Thanks. Yeah, I was working in Sweden, and I knew one of the CISOs for one of the banks. This must be around 2011, 2012 maybe. He said he wanted to make the first app for iPhone that could transfer money. So we had a discussion. I told him he wanted my help with securing this. I said, I know nothing about security on iPhone. He said, that's fine. I know nothing about making transactions on iPhones. So let's work together, figure this one out. And we took it from there. It's changed quite a bit, I must say, since those days.
Sounds like the start of a beautiful relationship. Okay, so I want to start there because when we look back traditionally, card payments have been essentially a dedicated device, what we would call a POI device to accept a card payment. And obviously now we're talking about using consumer devices, mobile phones, tablets, those sorts of things, to accept payments, are we going to see a future where everything becomes payments on consumer devices? Are we going to see a future where terminals and mobile device and payment devices on consumer kind of coexist? Are we going to see one win and one lose, or are they going to kind of evolve together essentially? And I think I'll start, Jochen, with you.
Sure, thank you. So in the long run, I'm pretty sure, and we have a consistent opinion, that in the long run, the software-based approach will win. But there will be some time for coexistence. There are highly optimized POI devices which are wired right now in a supermarket. That's not the primary use case for SoftPOS yet, even though I guess we talk later about some of the opportunities there. All the mobile use cases, you know, when you do any mobile service, as you said, 2 devices, if you have a device for your business and you have a device for card acceptance, that's not needed anymore. You merge them into one. Less hardware cost, less IT. We all know this from a taxi driver. You know, oh, you want to pay by card, let me get this Bluetooth-connected device. It never works, and it usually is also out of battery. Those problems are solved.
Okay. Anybody have another opinion on that? I see you smiling there, Ryan. And I know that Block has both kind of SoftPOS, MPoC-type solutions, but also dedicated hardware solutions. So where do you feel the future lies?
Yes. So I understand your point, but I think there are use cases where dedicated hardware is still going to be needed. The way I see it is the technology will grow together and somewhat merge. I think the presence of MPoC actually helps PTS devices, or what are currently PTS devices, grow in new ways, such that you kind of get more innovation across both. And so it's not that I disagree that software will win, but software will augment current hardware to create a different standard kind of expectation for that user and buyer and seller experience.
I actually do agree with Ryan, because in soft space, we do actually have merchants who would like to implement both solutions. Let me take an example on that. A retail merchants, they actually ask us for installing the PTS devices over the counter, but they actually, during the peak hours, they are taking out the MPoC type of solutions for queue busting. In FMP merchants, they install the MPoC solutions for order at the table, but they still remain the PTS terminal at the counter for the customer who prefer to pay at the counter. It's not a matter of format here. I think it's giving a flexibility of merchants the right tools in each of the solutions.
Interesting. Neal, do you have any points of view on this?
Yeah, I think we see, I agree with many of the statements here, and I think we see devices actually being augmented as well. So you get these purpose-built devices that are actually made for MPoC solutions. So I think that's what we'll see in the future. We'll see these converge, and I think there is a need for both to coexist for quite some time.
Interesting. So many. Okay, back to you, George.
I'm agreeing with all the comments made. There's one use case where many of our customers, when they have big stores, they keep always one traditional POS device connected there, because sometimes there's somebody with a magnetic stripe, depending on the region of the world, or they enforce a chip transaction, which by default is not on the mobile devices possible.
Interesting.
Which is why some solutions also have a separate dongle and SCRPs and that whole rabbit hole that half of us are very, very used to dealing with. The one thing we haven't really discussed a lot is some of the limitations we have for what I'll call self-service type environments. It's difficult to have, you know, a COTS-based system and the assembling of all of the pieces, yet it's also quite limiting to have some of the application type techniques required for what's currently in PTS. So I kind of see the push towards a lot of the self-service to be forcing some of the growth of all of these things together. Again, more so in some markets than others, but generally speaking.
It's interesting, because it actually leads into the next question, which is, are there scenarios where COTS-based solutions, MPoC-type solutions, are more suitable, more favorable than PTS? Is it a question of anywhere where you have a POI, then an MPoC solution can quite easily slot in, or are there kind of use case specific? Sometimes it's better, sometimes you're better off using a terminal. And to your point, self-checkout is probably an example of it. Do you have any other examples? Or
I'll go in a little bit different direction.
Okay.
I think MPoC is designed more as an ongoing audit. It's not exactly that, but it's designed to allow a product to evolve over time, not only from a security perspective, but it kind of unlocks continuous development for more agile organizations to do more quickly. And PTS is, by contrast, more of a point-in-time assessment of a current device in its current configuration, ignoring some of the Delta rules and things like that. But because of MPoC's ability to support rapid developments, it really depends on the seller, on the merchant, how much time they want to spend customizing that experience versus the more traditional sellers that are just using these devices for the very last piece of the transaction process. So the self-service is part of it, but it really depends on who your seller is and who the merchant is.
If I can comment on that, if I look at our customer base, a huge amount of our customer base is using what was traditionally called cash on delivery. We call it card on delivery. So you do a service, a plumber that is coming to your home fixing something, the parcel service that is delivering your new iPhone, the pizza service, depending on the region, that the end user wants to verify the pizza is hot before he's paying. It depends on the region. But all those cases have a main device, right, where they're working on. The road assistance has a device where they say, okay, you buy a battery, I fix your car. In the end, you need to sign on that tablet. And this is a mobile device which is compliant with PCI MPoC. Therefore, this existing main device, which is always charged, which is always connected, it's their one device for working, that is used. And many of those customers use us, and they discontinue the traditional mobile PTS devices because they don't need it anymore.
Interesting. Okay. So a lot of the focus initially when we had SPoC, and you mentioned SPoC, where you first started, the original standard we had for mobile payments, a lot of that focus, or people discussed micro merchants. So people like, turning up as a plumber, or perhaps having a car boot sale, or whatever it is on the weekend. But we've also heard during the discussions now people talking about queue busting, people talking about replacing PTS terminals in various contexts. Are we past the point? Should we not think of this as a micro merchant only solution? Is it broader than that? Neal.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, and I would answer yes. It is much broader now. I actually see some retailers changing the way they work in the store because of this solution. For example, the stores selling high-ticket items, they often like personal service.
Yes.
And it's something different bringing up your phone to take the payment than, hang on, I'm going to go get a PTS device. So there, it's adding some value. It makes it more personal. So we see those use cases happening. And I think, self-checkout, queue busting, and there's a lot of interest from large retailers to not just add this to their existing fleet of payment acceptance devices, but also to kind of augment a little bit how they work and make it more personal.
To pile on that argument, I guess, the internet e-com business is non-negotiable. And the in-store retail is fighting against this. And not everybody has an online store. But when they get a customer into their store, they do everything to get the best customer experience, exactly as you said. And then it's not just a mobile phone. Tablets are used very, very often, which are compliant. Sometimes big checkout screens are compliant. Since yesterday, dual screen terminals are compliant, they are considered as one physical device.
Allowed to be used. We don't, and under MPoC, we don't certify devices, but allowed
correct.
to use.
Thanks for correcting, yes.
I have to put on my standards.
Yeah, fair enough.
But moving kind of as an adjunct to this, and I'll position this question to you directly first, Irene. Are there regions where this type of solution is more popular, more appropriate? Is it really just a question of how broad the contactless deployment is, for example? But you're located at the moment, your organization in Southeast Asia, but you work across a number of regions, a number of countries. Are there areas where people embrace this more than others?
In Southeast Asia, I think we have contactless card. We also have QR. If you listen to one of the presentations we have yesterday, we talked about QR implementation in Southeast Asia as well. So, if I remember a statistic correctly, in 2024, there are like almost 80% of Southeast Asians are already using mobile payment. What does that mean? That means either consumer or the merchants already use and comfortable to mobile technology. But one interesting fact is the merchant in Southeast Asia, they still prefer to insert a card.
No, really?
Yes, that's actually the behavior. It's like their user habit is still prefer to insert the card even though they know that that's actually the contactless card and it can be tapped. So I'm seeing that actually MPoC could be one of the key driving factor. That's interesting, right?
Interesting.
Yes, because especially with latest MPoC 1.1 that already incorporate with the PTS and also SCRP devices in it.
Yes.
It gives them options to have the card reader as the market transitions into this like mobile acceptance growth.
Interesting. Any other points of view from around the world, Ryan?
I would suggest that it's not really linked to contactless, at least from our perspective, because we have the SCRP that go with it. To me, it's more about requirements about various CVMs and various thresholds that would require different forms of CVM.
For the audience, CVM is?
Cardholder verification method. The friction can often come up with PIN as opposed to dip or tap. And so for me, it's much more aligned to those situations where maybe you have to dip because you're above a certain level of transaction, or you have to use a PIN because it's been 20 transactions since your last PIN entry. Those, from our perspective, are a little more friction points that we work to work through, and not so much, again, the contactless versus, magstripe if you're an American. That's just been kind of our perception of the market.
Interesting. And would you say then, if there is the markets where they have a relatively high no CVM limit, and what I mean by that is you can tap your card, you don't need to enter a PIN, do anything else, are they markets where they're more open to embracing this sort of technology?
Absolutely. That's the frictionless payment experience.
Yeah.
That's what we strive and work for, to make the whole experience positive for both the seller and the buyer. And in that scenario, there's not the here's the device and the, yeah.
Okay, interesting. Are Europeans at the end there? What's your point of view?
Yeah, it's similar. In Europe, it's very easy. You have a CVM limit of 50 euros, and everybody knows his PIN in Europe, right? Except UK, where you have offline PIN and 100 pounds, slightly different. Considering the EU zone, everybody knows this because when you want to collect cash in an ATM, etc., it's always the same PIN. And MPoC is certifying this to be secure. There is no problem with entering the PIN at all, but we also know in the US, a lot of people don't know their PIN, right? So therefore, you have different CVM limits there and different authentication methods.
Interesting. Neal, any points of view?
Yeah, I think card acceptance is, especially the regions of Europe where we operate. I think card acceptance has been there for a long time. So this is not trying to add to it. So this is, I see more the change, and like I mentioned before, the different ways of working, and I completely agree. I think PIN entry is not a barrier, not here. So
Not at all.
yeah, I think use cases is the driver really here.
Plus, if you use your wallet, or I usually only pay with my watch. There's no more PIN. You unlock your watch when you connect it with your watch PIN, not with your card PIN. And therefore, it's a tokenized card, and there's no more CVM PIN entry needed.
Yep.
There's SCA if you do like strong customer authentication, if you do more than 5 payments in a row contactless, but that's a different discussion.
Yeah, it's interesting. So providing, I live in Australia, providing an Australian perspective for a second. Australia used to be and still is a very PIN-focused environment. Lots of people use PINs. However, I've noticed over the last 10 years, PIN use is reducing, not because people are purchasing less stuff or lower amounts. It's just the no CVM limit's gone up. People are using mobile phones more, and so there is less PIN being used in the environment, which actually also kind of helps secure the environment, because when you have a focus point of one particular CVM, it becomes a point of attack. But when that's more distributed, it becomes less valuable to an attacker to attack that one particular thing. But enough of me. I'm chairing the panel. I shouldn't talk. I apologize. Shh. No, don't tell anybody. So mobile security. I'm going to direct this first at you, Neal. Mobile security continues to evolve rapidly, and one of the things I think we've seen with mobile technology is the fact that we get new operating systems pretty much every year, and every year they improve the underlying security as well as providing new features and so forth. So the security of the COTS operating systems is vastly better today than it was, say, 10 years ago. Are there any new aspects of the mobile systems that you find valuable that have come in over the last few years, or perhaps are coming up in new operating systems where you think that's really helped us secure our mobile payment solution?
Yes, absolutely. So, having been around since we did the first SPOC solution and CPoC, now MPoC, I've seen the changes both in the standards, but in parallel to that, the changes in the mobile devices as well. And there's been a few times we had to more or less completely re-engineer the product, because now you had access to something you didn't have access to before, and by using it, you could actually improve the product significantly. And I haven't seen a big change like that in the last 2-3 years, but I think a few of them are coming. But I would say about 5-6 years ago, there was some major changes. But then getting the certification is one thing, right? Building the product. The other thing is that you have to maintain it. You have to make sure the system is secure. And I think there's been a lot of very positive changes on that front, because now you don't have to figure out from each manufacturer that you're supporting what the patch management will be like, for example. You get that from the OS manufacturer instead. That's been a huge change, actually. And operationally, a big improvement for us.
Interesting. Anybody else like to submit on that? Ryan?
I totally agree with your point about the evolution. We've had a product in market for 10 years, so it was architected for older devices on very legacy security architectures. We haven't had to do an upgrade. We've still been able to leverage that security model, but with the new advancements, we're able to kind of start over and take a much more modernized approach that is better for everyone. It takes less power, it takes less time, and that enables the entire product experience, back to product experience, to be better for all of our customers.
Okay, and I'm going to direct this at you, Irene, if I may. I know that a large part of your job is making sure that everything is being maintained in a compliant state and kept up to date and working and so forth. Does the continual advancement of mobile platforms, does that also create a challenge when you're designing a product and implementing that product on platforms you don't control, that can change, without you necessarily having foresight of that change?
Definitely, that's actually quite a huge challenge, especially now we are talking a lot of, the AI coming after all these things. That is the reasons why it's created quite a big impact to our product roadmap as well. Like, for example, what if one day all these AIs go in all these operations system platform is going to fully open up to all the developers? That means everybody can have better access to create smarter apps, but that also create a new risk for us. How are we going to tackle in that? That's actually, we need to think a little bit more deeper, and to counterattack is like, how can we maintain the trust and security of our product in this continuous learning and adaptive environments? That's actually quite a challenge for us.
Interesting. Anybody else have any points of view on that before I move on?
Anecdotal story.
Okay.
We had an issue where an OS change made a very significant impact to product performance. Luckily, it was caught before anything was launched, but that's the continuous engineering and testing that is required to keep that product that's in market still usable. Sometimes you never know what's coming down the pipe, and even when you do, you don't know all the details, and that's the real investment.
Right, one additional comment. We had a similar situation, plus additionally on the positive side, all the advancements, you get them more or less for free. You don't need to reinvent and do the coding yourself. You are building on a secure platform, and if the secure platform evolves further, You need to adapt your software and make sure it's used properly, but you don't need to implement the core backend below it, or the core components. That's a big advantage in my view.
Interesting. Okay. So let's say there's people in the audience here. Once again, a wonderful turnout. Thank you very much. I'm always surprised after lunch when we're not just sitting up here by ourselves. But let's say there's people in the audience who are thinking about developing a mobile acceptance solution, developing something, and they want to have it validated to MPoC. We have people here who have, many years of experience with certifications and so forth. What advice would you give people in the audience who are thinking about developing, implementing, using these types of solutions?
Just engage us.
Yes.
I was hoping for something that might be a little bit more, informative for the folks in the audience, but sure, there's lots of people here you can talk to. Neal, can I start with you with that one?
Yeah, sure. I think understand what it means to begin with, and not just getting certified, but actually having a product in market that processes large volumes of transactions and making that operationally viable, and then decide which parts you think, there must be a reason for building your own, right? So I think identify the reasons behind why you're building it, which parts are important to control for yourselves, and which parts perhaps should you maybe license from others. And because that's the benefit of MPoC, right? You can put the pieces together and create your own software or your own solution. And I think it's important to get the strategies right, but not stop at the building part, but operationally viable. That's the main thing I can say.
Interesting. Any other points of view there?
Yeah, I would second what you said. The operational part is important. If you look at the requirements at MPoC, there's on the one hand side the technical requirements. And if you have a smart team, and I'm assuming you all have a smart team, that's doable. But, it's work, you get it done. You need to operationalize it to scale at big. But there's the other aspect like SSF, SSS and SLC we heard about this morning, about getting all the processes around it in a proper way that they are maintainable and secure. So security by design, security first, they are buzzwords, but you need to live them. Otherwise, you're running always behind and you want to be a front. And that, I think, for us as an organization was not a bigger change in thinking the security first, but getting the processes on the clock to make sure, once a month, once a week, once a quarter, do all those things. That was a little bit of a challenge. I think we mastered it pretty well, but that is something to be considered when you want to tap into the stuff.
Regardless of what the certifications you are entitled and you need to enter when you start your MPoC journey, you need to make sure that your certification is a continuous conversations with your lab partner. That's actually not a one-time works. It's not going to just one time. It's going to repeat in yearly basis. The hardest thing is not just about passing the one-time work with flying colors.
Interesting. And so, is mobile payments on consumer devices? Is it just you write an app and that's it? Is this the easy way to accept payments? Is it if you're an app developer, it's going to be simple for you to create an MPoC app, get it validated, and get it out in the market. Is it that easy?
Depends on what tools you're using. And this is not meant to be a plug for anyone, but that's one of the reasons that MPoC provides the ability to integrate an SDK that's provided by entities such as ours and many others. Depending on that architecture, it's quite easy to do exactly that, but it moves that security problem to other providers.
I second what you said. Building an APK or an app is trivial. You open your IDE, you press a button, you have an app. It takes literally 10 seconds. But all the smart logic in the secure, isolated SDK and all the backend A&M services, that's the hard work, not the APK or the app itself.
Yeah, I would say if I knew how hard it was, I'm not sure I would have started. So
See?
it's been a very interesting journey, but it's a challenge to build an MPoC solution if you're doing everything yourself from the ground up. It takes a while, but personally, I have to say it's been a very interesting and fun challenge as well. So I think it depends on your what you want to achieve in the end.
And as you say, we have in MPoC the ability to have an SDK, an MPoC SDK that is created that does all of the payment stuff, does all of the security stuff, and you can then integrate that into an application. And as you say, you don't necessarily need as much knowledge. It can be quite simple to integrate that SDK into the application. So we're trying to facilitate that with our standards development.
If I can make one comment on that.
Of course,
Many
yeah.
of our customers, like parcel delivery, I mentioned earlier, they're doing exactly that. They have no real clue about all the payment details. They have their business APK and integrate us, and the problem is solved for them.
Yep.
I guess it's for most of our solutions.
But you mentioned earlier on attestation monitoring, or A&M. For the audience, what is that? What does that mean? What does it do?
So basically, it ensures with different measures that when you hit I want to pay on your mobile device, it does all the security checks to verify the system is, from a security aspect, ready to accept that the payment. And when you enter a PIN, it does it all over again. So it ensures not only as a baseline, where MPoC is providing a baseline. I guess we all have some additional secrets to make it super secure. We can talk about that. But we do everything we think we can do today, and we're constantly improving to make sure this device is, from a security point, so secure that end customers are trusting this device. And there's a lot of logic on the client, which is then communicated to the server. But the server, the backend, the AMN backend, is making the decision, not the terminal itself, not the mobile phone. The mobile phone sends a lot of data to the backend. It's evaluated depending on the way. It asks Google for a decryption token to really make sure there are enough steps in the entire game to make sure this device is secure. In our platform, you have a color status on the backend, so the merchant sees on the backend, yeah, it's a green color if it's a bigger merchant. If it's not green, you can't do a payment. Very simple. For example, if your security update hasn't been done in a recent time, you know, it turns yellow and you get a notification, hey, you need to install the latest Google security update.
So we talked about the fact that mobile platforms, the operating systems, they're updated quite rapidly and you know, on an ongoing basis. Is there some sort of relationship between the A&M and whether the OS is recent or old? Like, is the A&M less important on newer operating systems as opposed to older operating systems, or is it the same for everything? Ryan breathed in, so I'm going to go to him. I heard you.
It matters the exact same amount. The difference is how much data ends up going to that back end to make a decision. I think that's probably universally true.
Yeah.
So the yes, whatever that is, whether it's a cryptographic piece of information or some sort of enablement token, that yes is always kind of gatekeeping the acceptance of payments or PIN or any number of secure assets. So the big thing that changes by OS is just how much information and potentially assurance we have that the device is indeed secure.
Yeah, I think you're running a secure piece of secure software in an inherently insecure environment. It's insecure maybe not because the environment is built to be insecure, but because we don't know who's using it or how they're using it or what they've done with it. Right? So even if you start off with something that's reasonably secure, you can make it very insecure if that's what you want to do. But we still have to run or decide not to run on that. So I think that station and monitoring is a very good component because you feed information, you make sure you're getting the right information from the device, and then because the decision makers in the back end, you can fairly reliably know that this device does fulfill the security requirements that we have or not. So it is different, and I agree, it is a little bit different between OS versions, and you have to adapt with changes that are coming and like we discussed before with the features that are coming, but the general concept of making the decision in the back end, being able to profile devices, seeing things that are different. Like if you have 100 of the same and then one behaves differently, well, probably you should be looking at the one, right? So that's the type of thing you can do by monitoring this over time and building up your profiles in the back end.
And that's actually kind of an intangible aspect of controls in terms of basically anomaly detection.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, one of the most challenging aspects in going through MPoC is being able to quantify that and test it and provide that assurance to our assessors and the whole ecosystem that it really works, and it's based on those anomalies. And what's an anomaly? Anything.
Yeah, exactly. And it helps you, when you have some volume and you actually build those profiles, it is extremely helpful and very interesting as well to see how some of them some deviate significantly, and you know that, okay, something's going on here. So,
Interesting.
That's also one comment, like all our big customers who have like tens of thousands of terminals, they usually have one device type, and they're all managed by MDM, Mobile Device Management. So that's their way to ensure if there's a new OS update at patch level, they just deploy it at night, and there's no way around it. That makes it even easier for the consumers to trust those devices.
Interesting. Okay, as we run out of time, I always like to have a bit of a quick lightning round towards the end. So with some, I think they're fun questions. I don't know whether people will agree with me, but very quickly, what was your first mobile phone?
Sony Ericsson?
Sony Ericsson?
Yes.
But what, do you remember the model?
No, some sort of like flip phone.
Oh, flip phone, okay. Right?
The Nokia that everybody had.
Wow.
It still exists and runs.
And it's still running on the same battery?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had that Nokia as well. I had before one IEG 9080. It was 1996 or 1997. And I found a picture of me holding it, very proud that I had this thing in my hand which actually can do calling home. And now the same size device can do everything, including accepting payments. I think it's a fantastic direction. Next to camera, internet browser, notebook, it's all on one device now.
Neal?
Yeah, I think it's a Motorola. I think it was called TAC2. Don't exactly
like
remember. It's
StarTAC?
a flip thing. Yeah. So it was heavy and hardly fit in my pocket, and I was so happy when I got it. So, cool.
So none of us had the Motorola bag phone?
I did not, but I had something close to it. But I'm not going to talk about my age here on stage. Next question, physical wallet, or do you keep all of your cards on your phone?
Phone.
Phone?
Both.
Both.
Phone plus Germany is a little bit behind on digitization. I need to carry my ID and my driver's license. There is no digital edition of it. Therefore, I have a wallet. But payments always, usually by watch, sometimes by phone.
Neal?
Yeah, I don't even have a wallet anymore. So
Yeah.
Yep, I'm the same. Okay, bigger phone with longer battery or smaller phone with less battery?
Bigger phone with longer battery. I need to take a lot of photos. And I need to use my phone to accept payment.
I want to be able to put the phone in my pocket as opposed to like a back
Big one.
pocket or a slate carrying around. So definitely a smaller one.
Smaller one?
I'm with you. It needs to put into my jeans, and size does matter. It needs to be small enough that I can read it, because I'm getting old as well. It needs to be big enough that I can read it, but it needs to be small enough, and it needs to last one day. I charge it every night, like my watch as well. But it needs to last an entire day, which sometimes might be 24 hours long.
Neal?
yeah, it goes back to the wallet issue. Running out of battery means you can't pay anymore. So I'll go for the battery any day of the week.
There we go. Okay, and to close it out, we've talked about the history and the future a little bit, but I think what I've heard is that mobile payments isn't a fad. It's not something that is going to go away. It's not something necessarily that will displace terminals, although disagreement on that. It's something that will coexist. To the people in the audience, what should they be considering when they're thinking about their next reterminalization or thinking about acceptance solutions? What should differentiate them in terms of whether they choose a POI device or a mobile acceptance device or the types of mobile acceptance device? What advice would you give them? And I'll start with you here, Irene.
User experience. We have seen a lot of the merchants, either the merchants and also the consumers are pretty concise and constantly feedback about the user experience. So the better, the smoother the user experience of the solutions that you can provide to them, I think that's the next thing that they are looking at.
Ryan?
Completely agreed. And it's also
Thank you.
about where you want to invest in that user experience. If you're planning on re-architecting and re-engineering an app, for example, you've got a certain path to go that will help you get there quickly and more efficiently. So it really depends on how you want to be customizing that user experience. But at the end of the day, yes, user experience.
I agree as well, fully. Plus, I would like to add that in those use cases, software-based approaches help you to integrate more parts. Irene mentioned earlier QR-based payments. In software, just adding it is relatively simple, right? In a more hardware-based device, I mean, there are many running on Android as well, but not all of them. It might be harder to add additional functionality to hardware-focused POI devices.
Okay. Neal, any last comments?
Yeah, I think use case is very important, and you should consider the market you're in. And I think if you have a larger store, thinking about the whole experience, for the user experience, but not just from the payment device, but for the whole retail store or floor that you're on, and then finding the best payment solution in the right place. And I think I do believe they will all live together for some time.
Excellent. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. I hope you all enjoyed that as much as I did, because I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you all very much. I'd like the audience, if you could, to thank our panel members. I think they've had brilliant answers. And thank you, and we will see you later on. Thank you very much.